The night air over Kiev has always carried a strange duality since the war began. By day, the city breathes defiance, traffic hums cautiously, cafes open their doors, and people move forward with a quiet stubbornness that has become Ukraine's signature. By night, the same streets listen. Every distant sound feels amplified. Every pause carries weight. It is in this fragile space between routine and ruin that rumors grow teeth, and in recent days, one rumor has refused to stay silent: the idea that Russia's retaliation may finally cross a symbolic red line, with President Volodymyr Zelensky's residence itself becoming a target. This story does not begin with a missile launch. It begins with humiliation, at least as it is perceived in Moscow. Over the past months, Ukraine's deep strike capabilities have expanded in ways that would have seemed unthinkable earlier in the war. Russian airbases far from the front lines have been hit, strategic infrastructure has been disrupted, high-profile Russian military assets have been damaged or destroyed. Each successful strike chips away not just at hardware, but at the image of control the Kremlin works relentlessly to maintain. For Vladimir Putin, image is not a side concern. It is central to power. The Russian state has long cultivated the idea that the homeland is shielded, that while wars may rage beyond its borders, Russia itself remains untouchable. When Ukrainian drones reach deep into Russian territory, that illusion fractures. The public sees it, the generals feel it, and Putin, whose authority rests on the promise of strength, cannot ignore it. Inside Russia's military command structure, retaliation is not simply emotional. It is strategic theater. The response must be visible, memorable, and unmistakably painful. This is where the idea of a symbolic strike begins to take shape. Not necessarily because Zelensky's residence offers military value, but because it represents something far more potent: leadership, defiance, and the living embodiment of Ukrainian resistance. Zelensky has crafted his wartime image carefully, though not artificially. He did not flee, he stayed. He filmed messages in the streets of Kiev when many assumed the city would fall within days. His presence turned into a weapon of morale, not only for Ukrainians, but for audiences worldwide. Every time he appears on camera in Kiev, he sends an implicit message to Moscow: you have not broken us. For the Kremlin, that message is intolerable. Russian military doctrine has always emphasized psychological impact. From Grozny to Aleppo, the strategy has often involved overwhelming force, not just to defeat an enemy militarily, but to shatter their sense of security. When Putin and his generals speak of alarming retaliation, they are speaking in this language. The goal is not merely to destroy, but to terrify, to signal that nowhere is safe, not even the heart of leadership. Yet such a move carries enormous risk. Targeting a head of state's residence is not just an escalation. It is a statement to the world that the war has entered a new phase. It would invite unprecedented backlash, potentially drawing in actors who have so far limited their involvement. This is the tension playing out behind closed doors in Moscow: the desire to reassert dominance versus the fear of triggering consequences even Russia cannot fully control. Within Russia's general staff, opinions are divided. Some argue that restraint has only emboldened Ukraine. They point to each successful Ukrainian strike as evidence that Russia's red lines mean nothing unless enforced. To them, a dramatic strike is overdue. Others caution that symbolism cuts both ways. Striking Zelensky's residence could transform him from a wartime leader into a near-mythic figure, especially if he survives. The narrative could shift from intimidation to martyrdom in waiting. Putin himself sits at the center of this debate, shaped by his own history. He came to power promising stability after chaos. Over the years, he has projected the image of a man who always has a plan, who never acts impulsively. And yet, history shows that when Putin feels personally challenged or publicly embarrassed, his responses grow sharper, less predictable. The recent language coming from Russian officials suggests something is brewing. Phrases like inevitable response and decisions have been made are not accidental. They are designed to leak just enough fear to unsettle Kiev and its allies without committing to specifics. It is psychological warfare in its purest form, waged through hints and shadows rather than missiles. In Kiev, these signals are taken seriously, but not with panic. Ukrainian intelligence has long assumed that Zelensky himself is a target. Protective measures around key locations are layered and dynamic, designed to change constantly. Residences are not fixed symbols, they are decoys as much as dwellings. The real target, Ukrainian officials know, is not a building but confidence. What makes the current moment different is the sense that Moscow wants a spectacle. Not a quiet assassination attempt, not a covert operation, but something visible enough to dominate headlines and reshape the narrative. The idea of a palace burning is as much metaphor as possibility. It represents the image Russia may want the world to see, Ukrainian leadership under direct fire. At the same time, Russia is acutely aware of Western perception. Any strike that appears to deliberately target a civilian area or a symbolic non-military site risks solidifying global support for Ukraine even further. Sanctions already severe could tighten. Military aid could accelerate. NATO's posture could harden. These are not abstract concerns. They are calculated in Moscow daily. This is why the threat itself may be part of the strategy. By forcing Ukraine to divert resources to protect leadership and symbols, Russia creates pressure without firing a shot. By keeping the world guessing, it maintains relevance and fear. The question is whether this is enough for a Kremlin that increasingly measures success in emotional impact rather than territorial gain. For Zelensky, the danger is real, but so is the opportunity. Every threat reinforces his narrative of standing firm against a larger aggressor. Every escalation attempt strengthens his appeal to allies. He understands, perhaps better than anyone, that survival itself is a form of resistance. As long as he remains visible, speaking from Kiev, the message remains unchanged. Ukraine endures. Behind the scenes, Ukrainian planners prepare for worst-case scenarios. Continuity of government plans are updated. Command structures are decentralized. The state is designed to function even if symbols fall. This is not optimism. It is hard-earned pragmatism born from nearly 3 years of war. The international community watches closely, reading every Russian statement, every troop movement, every shift in rhetoric. Analysts debate whether Moscow is bluffing or genuinely preparing for a dramatic escalation. History offers examples of both. Russia has often signaled its intentions loudly before acting. It has also used noise as cover for inaction. What cannot be denied is that the war has entered a psychological phase where symbols matter as much as territory. Palaces, residences, headquarters, and landmarks have become proxies for power itself.